Hello, this is your host Akhil Navluri, and welcome to the brand new episode of the Techospace podcast series. In this podcast episode, I'm super thrilled and honored to welcome our eminent and prominent industry leader pertaining to the IT space, known for having a lot of leadership gigs across his career. And he's none other than Mr. Ryan Pehrson, who is based out of Boston, Massachusetts, the United States of America. So, Ryan, it gives me an absolute pleasure to welcome you to this podcast episode of mine. So, Ryan, how are you doing, and how's the situation in Boston at the moment?
Hey, thanks for welcoming me here, Akil. I'm super excited to talk to you. Yeah, the situation in Boston is great. We're going into fall as we record this show. So the weather is beautiful. It's nice and cool outside, sunny day. Everything's great.
Amazing, amazing. That's good to know. That's good to know. In Australia, I mean, talking about Melbourne, if you really want to know more about how the things are in Melbourne, we're almost coming to the end of winter now, and the summer starts from next month. So looking forward for that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited to be here today and to talk through, some of the things that I'm doing. Yeah, guide me.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ryan. I'm really going to have a great conversation with you, knowing about your career and talking a lot about things that you've experienced throughout. So, at the stroke of this hour, which is 9:06 p.m. Melbourne time, let's kick off with the podcast episode. All right. So, Ryan, I mean, I just come to know that you have led leadership roles across major enterprises, and I just wanted to understand, or let's say, if you would give a complete, if you could walk me through your journey, and since you have had a great journey in the IT industry, I wanted to understand, like, how did that shape your perspective on technology, which has become a driver for the business transformation?
Oh, what a great question. Yeah, so I don't want to give my full resume here. It's certainly a 30-year resume. I started out in technology, I guess when I was really young. My problem was I wanted to play computer games, and the only way to do that for my parents was to program them, right? So I was programming my own computer games when I was in grade school on, I think, an Apple II or something. So I had this facility with technology when I got to my professional career already. When I was at Northwestern University, I was a music theater major, by the way, and I wanted
Okay.
something that would pay the bills, and that was technology. I looked around, I recognized that I had this facility that others didn't, and it was really the comfort and confidence that I had that others didn't. And at the time, everyone was trying to get on the internet for the first time and get their website up and get their offices connected to the network. So for a number of years, that's what I did. But I ended up wanting to solve bigger problems. And so I joined what's now Accenture. What I really wanted to learn was data center technology, the complex technology. I really want to get my
Right.
hands on that. But I learned through the years that really technology is the easy part, almost the boring part. Nothing really
Yeah.
works unless you've got coordination, orchestration of people, right? And that's where things usually fail, right? So, and I learned that also through my music and theater experience, I would say, kind of this ensemble work together, timing, listening skills, right? And all of those things translate very well to technology leadership. Maybe not in the early years of your career, but certainly in the later ones. Um,
Yep.
so fast forward through a number of roles in financial services and consulting and et cetera, right? I ended up at a 240-year-old Japanese company in the biopharma space. And their challenge was they wanted to essentially digitally transform, um, but it's obviously a very traditional company that we're talking about. They wanted to tack
Yep.
on a high-tech model, right? So
Okay.
that requires a cultural transformation even more than a technology transformation, right?
Right.
And so I learned took that ensemble thinking. I learned concepts like organizational harmony, which is called wa in Japanese.
Okay.
Consensus building, which is nemawashi, is kind of this idea that
All
you
right.
you talk to everyone before you decide, right? and this
Okay.
idea of like an organizational rhythm, right? And so that started developing kind of my approach to digital transformation, I would say. Maybe I'll stop there and let you ask some questions.
I'm completely aware of the fact that you just got the hang of certain Japanese, let's say, words. So you worked in a Japanese company. So did you get that chance of learning Japanese there? Like, was there any chance of learning Japanese with the team that you were working with?
Uh, there was a chance, and I would say I tried. Um,
Okay.
I did not spend most of my time in Japan, and the language of business was English, right? So
Okay.
now what I did notice is, my teams often, if they did not speak Japanese, were excluded from that process of consensus building in a way.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I definitely relied on my Japanese colleagues to be in the room for discussions, right? And it
Yeah.
wasn't that anybody was trying to exclude. I mean, the Japanese are very polite people. I think it's more
Oh,
that they didn't want anyone to um, feel excluded when they were speaking in Japanese. So they,
got the point.
yeah, went off to
Yeah,
their own room.
completely. Absolutely, absolutely. They didn't want that alienation kind of a thing happening, within the people, or
Yeah.
let's say the people who are in the diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But look, I learned this ensemble thinking. You find this in sports teams too, right? People who have a sports background, they're used to working with other people. That is the kind of mentality that you need in order to execute a digital transformation, right? So technology
Absolutely.
projects succeed like a musical ensemble. You have to orchestrate, you have to
Okay.
coordinate. It's not about having an individual that's leading the charge and being the soloist, right?
Exactly. Teamwork always counts. And I just love the example of, the musical ensemble with that of the, being part of different projects. So it's
Yeah,
a beautiful example, to be honest. And it really, strikes a chord with me here.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, Ryan. Ryan, personally, I'm pretty keen to understand and ask you this particular question. I would just like to know, like, how do you think the AI initiative, the digital transformation, and leadership come together and they create a business value? How do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, and first of all, I would say if you're deploying AI without a really clear idea of what the business value is or the outcome is, you're already sort of missing out, right? But I would say AI is our current wave of digital transformation, right? And the leadership value here is you kind of need to create this organizational alchemy, right, for it to work and for it to produce the value, right? And that's about things like your technical capabilities, sure, and your platform foundation, sure. And those things are almost the easiest part. That's the thing that everybody focuses on, right? But the next kind of three topics here that I'm about to talk about are the things that nobody, focuses on at the beginning, right? Number one, cultural intelligence. How
Okay.
do you read your organizational flow? I mean, literally for AI, your business process probably touches many departments and organizational flows, right? Of information, of value creation, of whatever, right? You need to read those. And you also need to read what the resistance is, right? Resistance is actually protective of the organization's value in most cases. It's not, as most leaders think, it's like, oh, people are protecting their jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some of that, right? But often it's really protecting the organization, right? Strategic restraint, knowing when to, take action and when not to take action, right? And then there's this sort of almost indefinable leadership synthesis, right? You've got to get the leadership team together and talking and being open with each other, right? For a
Yep.
digital transformation to work. And it's going to require changes in your organizational structure, perhaps, in the way that you work, right? So there's like this training that needs to happen of the organization before you leap to the value, right? So most leaders focus on just the technical, they don't focus on the cultural. And having a platform, as good as it might be, without that cultural readiness means you have unused technology, right?
All right.
We talk about also a principle called Wu Wei. It's a Chinese principle, but
Okay.
it was also introduced famously to the Western world by Alan Watts, I would say, I think. And it's about having maximum impact with minimum effort and minimum resistance, right? So the way he described it was it's the art of sailing versus rowing, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's the
All
kind of
right.
the effect that we want to have when we're conducting digital transformation. And I guess last thing I'll say on this, humans are about change. That is what we do. We have changed for millions of years, and we have adopted technology more and more rapidly in the last, 100 or so years. That is literally what we do. It's not that we can't do it, right? It's more that we have to, help humans do the transformation, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you were just, just coming up with the point stating cultural intelligence. If I would just like to, put this, put this across to you, when you're talking about cultural intelligence, did you, come across such kind of a situation?
Did I apply the cultural intelligence? Yes. So, I mean, this is something like initially in my career early on, I was this bold, very director, sort of guy, right? We called it a red personality, right? And, I would get results, right? But it would often be, through kind of this forcing, the rowing approach, right? Um, in later years, I've discovered the wisdom of knowing when to act, knowing when to sit back and let things develop, right? And at my last employer, that was, very much the case, right? So, initially, for example, I was appointed as the cloud czar to lead the cloud transformation, right? Even the
Okay.
framing of that is very difficult if you actually want transformation. What you need to do is allow some things to develop. For example, um, I knew that everyone would want a self-service approach to cloud. But I also knew that if I tried to introduce it too early, I wouldn't get the I wouldn't get the funding. I wouldn't get the buy-in, right? And then
Yeah.
it would probably fail. What I needed was demand, right?
Mhm.
I needed the organization to realize that it needed self-service. And then I could do all the things like the DevSecOps transformation and, self-service and developer experience and all of the technological things, right?
Yep.
So sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to wait for something to develop before you go ahead and execute, right? And then you have the wind at your back rather than, fighting upstream, right?
Indeed, indeed. That's an amazing example, that completely, explains the point to me. And, as they say, right, suppose you release a movie, for example, a movie is, way ahead of its time. You don't find the right audience. Suppose you have the same technology, you don't find the right users for that. So I think this is a good correlation, which I am giving for, to in this podcast episode.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I have found going back a couple of years shows which I would have loved to see in the theaters, but I never saw at the time. But I guess that might be because I developed as a viewer, right?
Indeed, indeed. That completely, sums up the point for me. Now, Ryan, I just wanted to understand like what's preventing all these major companies across the world to, let's say understand the value of the digital investments.
Yeah, so look, I mean, in our preparation for this show, I spoke with you about there's about $900 billion globally wasted each year. Reading my little notes here in digital transformation projects, right? So there's that's like a 70% failure rate, maybe more than that, and you have to wonder why that is, right? Um, a lot of times, the big four consulting firms are involved in this, and they have excellent frameworks. I don't want to, I don't want to say anything negative really about any of them. Um,
Yeah.
they're great as far as they go, right? McKinsey has their Rewired, which analytically it's excellent, but it misses out on this cultural dimension, right? And there's probably reasons for that. It's kind of the art rather than the science, right? BCG has pretty good adaptation, but it treats resistance, for example, as something you must fight against as a problem. Same thing with Deloitte. Deloitte is very good about behavioral science, but it again treats resistance as a problem to be solved, right? Rather
Hmm.
than value. And Accenture is also, I would say, it's pretty good on building the system and the capabilities, but it's not about strategic guidance, around restraint, right? So the key insight that I've had is that there is this organizational intelligence which expresses itself in resistance often enough, right? And you must ask yourself, what is the organization trying to protect? Often it's something that you haven't thought of. Often it's the key to getting to this Wu Wei principle of, effortless transformation, right? So you really need to focus in on these not as adversaries, but as partners. When I was growing up, I actually studied Aikido as well, for a while, and Aikido is another Japanese martial art. So I used to bring it up a lot in my former employer. But in Aikido, what you do is you redirect energy. An attacker comes at you, right? You transform that conflict into kind of almost a partnership, right? He brings his energy at you, you redirect it, and he ends up on the mat or whatever. But you're redirecting energy in the organization. You're not opposing it. If you oppose it, you will lose. Like the organization's immune system is much stronger than you are as a transformation leader. What you need to do is learn how to work with it, right? And so that sort of guides the framework on probably why a lot of these things fail and what to do about it.
Exactly. Now, when we talk about Akito, which you just brought up a Japanese term, like where do you think you have used Akito in your entire career? Like, were there any instances that you have experienced that kind of a thing?
Yeah, again, this has been part of my growth, right? Even though I studied Aikido, earlier on in my career, again, I encounter resistance, and I'm like, well, look, I want to be successful. I don't want all of this block on what I'm trying to get done. I mean, so and so, the big head cheese, told me that I had to get this done, right? So I would go center line and try to push through and go over or under and around everything. But it takes a lot of energy to do that, and you develop more resistance this way. You people who are maybe not appreciating what you're doing, right? It works much better, I have learned, to take time. There's another proverb that I used to use about if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together.
Okay.
If we're
Yeah.
talking about a small project, fine, go alone, go center line, bust through the obstacles. If you're talking about digital transformation, you must go together. And yes, it's going to take time. And you got to bake that in. You got to bake that into your plan, right? Digital transformation, I think now is a journey that we're always going to be on, right? The technology has accelerated so much, the disruption cycles have accelerated so much. You might as well just have a constant transformation program. So how I've
Everywhere.
used Aikido in my approach is more about mindset. It's about mindset. It's about how I approach problems.
All right. So, I mean, this is a pretty new thing which I just got out of the blue. Now, let's say there's a fresher in the IT industry, and like if he has to use Akito, like how does he has to approach that?
I'm sorry, could you say that question again? I'm sorry.
So basically, let's say, Ryan, like I mean, there are the freshers in the IT industry, and they're pretty new to all these, they have that mentality of a student, and they have not yet, just gone over the IT industry, understanding the nuances of how to, work. So if that Akito kind of a mentality, comes into them, how do they first start and how do they approach things?
Yeah. So if I was starting out now, I would say um, work on understanding how the organization works that you're in. Understand stakeholder mapping, understand where power actually lives. It's not the same as the power hierarchy, like the VP's title and everything, right? Sometimes it's the same, but you also need to understand, key influencers. I worked in a organization once where I made the mistake of thinking that only the people with titles were the people I needed to be worried about. And in
Right.
reality, um, as I developed my career, particularly as a consultant, I recognized that there were individual contributors who had been there a long time who were very influential. And often you actually needed to get them on board even before you got the VP or whoever on board, right? Because that's the guy who's going to go tell the VP what to do, right? So understand those kind of dynamics. Learn to read the power structures, the flows of the organization, right? That skill is super important, and that's not a technology skill. That's not a certification you can go out and learn, right?
Yeah.
Learn to be a trusted advisor yourself. Learn how that works, right? You can be that. You can be that person who develops influence, right? Yeah, that's I guess what I would say.
Exactly. So, listeners, you just heard it from Ryan, and Ryan has a piece of advice for you. Like, if you really want to, understand more about keto and that nuances, I think, now this is the best answer for you. And yeah, and that actually, gives me an understanding, or let's say, lays me a roadmap. When I have to, progress from my career as well. Since I hold 4 years of experience in the IT industry, but again, going further on after completing my masters, it's also going to be pretty handy for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing. Now, I mean, these two industries are pretty much, I always have the curiosity about these two industries, like let's say about the life sciences and about the healthcare. So in life sciences and healthcare, Ryan, like what kind of AI initiatives are being laid upon, or let's say laid out?
Yeah, AI initiatives in healthcare life science. Yeah, so look, I mean, first I'll say I think regulated industries are actually probably AI's sweet spot. And I'm talking here not just about Gen AI, I'm talking about AI in terms of classical machine learning as well, right? But so there are constraints in healthcare and life sciences, right? And the constraints force you to have a better architecture and a better system. So constraints are good, right? So I wanted to say that because some of the things that I'm about to say are probably a little bit more, they might scare people a little bit, right? So first,
Okay.
clinical decision support. So what is this? This use case is you have physicians who are working with patients, and those doctors are making decisions whether it's on what medicine, what therapy, et cetera. Well, physicians have this problem, at least in the US, where they're spending maybe 15 minutes with a patient, particularly the front line, where there's the family practices, et cetera, right? And they don't have a lot of time to take notes, to read notes, to make these decisions, right? So how can we help them? So that's a real value for the physician. It's a value for the patient if those decisions are better. The second one is drug discovery.
Okay.
Um, I would say, look, there are all this molecular data that we have, but designing therapies is hard, and it takes a lot of money today. Not only just discovering a potential drug candidate, but then going through clinical trials, et cetera. This is the reason why pharma companies spend so much money, right? Um, so the discovery acceleration is really important to pharma companies as stage kind of one, right? And that requires pattern recognition and molecular data, and also in the data of how the the substance works with the body, right? So we have data on pharmacokinetics, right? Some of it's good data, some of it's not good data, and maybe we don't necessarily know all the time which is which. But if we can model that in silico, right? We can then develop drugs more rapidly. And that, look, the reason I joined pharma was that I wanted to help cure cancer, or I wanted to help cure a rare disease,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And it's not about the technology at that point, right? It's about technology in the service of mankind, right? Which resonates more strongly for me at this point. Um, I would say there's actually probably one there too about clinical trials optimization. How do I find the right patients? How do I interpret the drug safety more rapidly, right? There are drug safety signals everywhere. How do I use those? Regulatory intelligence, so proactive compliance rather than reactive compliance. If you get my drift there. So again, some of that's about, safety of drugs, right? So being much more proactive about drug safety signals, right? And reporting, adverse effects, right? That's this sort of thing. Patient journey optimization. So we want to be privacy compliant here, right? So I
Okay.
mean, the difficulty for a pharma company is we don't really interact directly with a patient, right? Or we haven't in the past. That's the doctor's job. We help the doctor, right? Um, and yet, so for things like rare diseases, right? With a rare disease, I, as a patient, I would go through an 8 to 10 year diagnostic journey. Why? Because doctors are working through this list of differential diagnoses, and it's based on Occam's razor. Like the most likely explanation is, something that lots of humans have. The least likely explanation is a rare disease. There might be only tens or hundreds of, humans in the world who have this rare disease, right? How can I help them, be found? How can I help doctors find them more rapidly? Because honestly, if you have a rare disease and you're waiting 8 to 10 years to figure out what it is, you're in bad shape by the time you're diagnosed, right? And that,
Exactly. Yeah.
that hits you in the heart to think about, right? So predictive analytics around identify patient finding, right? So those are kind of four things. I would say companies that can master that AI within that regulatory constraint, they build a moat, right? And so there's competitive advantage there, but also there's a benefit to humanity, right? So, our angle at Pharynós, my company, is that we help, life sciences startups build the
Okay.
regulatory compliant AI infrastructure from the ground up, right? Because we really believe that that engine of innovation is going to produce great things for humanity. Right?
All right. I mean, yeah, you just brought a very interesting point. I mean, you brought a point about your company, Fairness. Now, I want to hear more about your company. Like, when was it started and what was the backstory for that?
Oh yeah. Well, you look. I mean, like I said, I have consulted in the past for companies at kind of a small scale on my own. I have, you know, 10, 12 years of, management consulting experience with the big guys like Accenture and boutiques. And, there's this resonance I have with startup companies in particular, smaller companies who are really the engine of innovation often. Um, and when I moved on from my last job, I decided, look, I'd really like to get back to building something. I want to help organizations thrive. I want to seize this moment that we have with AI and help produce value for the world, right? So I have this huge ambition, this sense that, we can do great things together. And, I've got some skills in helping organizations do that. So Theranos is about, maybe it's called fractional CTO, but it's like the Fortune 500 mindset, strategic mindset applied
Right.
in
Hmm.
a way that can scale with a small company and scale up, right? I truly believe that there are going to be startups today who start out as, a $100,000 company for a seed round, And through, the benefit of AI, being a very small company, few people are going to scale up to, tens of billions of dollars. And why? Because they're going to be producing value for millions and millions of people, right?
Right.
So I want to be part of helping companies do that. And that's what Theranos is about.
Surely. Now, when we talk about Pharynós company, do you think, you want to expand across the world, or let's say you want to, try, I mean, go around the world, or, reach the far reaches of the world, except, just confining yourself to US? Like, do you have the plans of, exploring Europe, Asia, Canada, any of that plans from your end with
Yeah, I
respect to
mean,
your company?
we're based in the US, right? But and to be clear, at the moment there's one full-time employee, and that's me, right?
Okay.
But we are in discussions with projects in Asia today, also Europe, I would say. Um, and we're flexible to do that sort of thing. I mean, to us, it's more about, are you qualified as an organization? I don't mean that in a negative way. It's like, are do you have the audacious goal? Are you set up for success? Can Theranos play in helping you be successful?
All
Right?
right. That's an amazing initiative. I would like to, know more about Pharynós. Suppose, if I ever meet you in person, Ryan, probably if I ever come to the United States. So surely we could have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I would love that.
Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. So now, Ryan, I'm keen to understand this point from your end. I want to understand this. Like let's say, what are the, let's say the blind spots or the missteps that are actually, preventing the organizations, or let's say derailing the the AI initiatives.
Yeah. Well, so I'm writing a series on LinkedIn right now. It's on leading transformation, and I'll give you the links for this. But we've already talked about why some of the frameworks fail. But I think there are some fatal patterns with AI initiatives, and the first one is similar to what I said, right? You focus on the AI first. AI is the value. Sprinkle this pixie dust and on our current process, and suddenly we're going to have more value and we can fire lots of people or something. I mean, that's the level of thinking we sometimes see today, right? What you need to do is think about your problem first. I mean, literally map the flow, right? Map the process. Work on the process first, like do that manual work, um, and then add the AI, right? So that's number one. It's kind of this reversal of the way that you should be thinking about it. Number two is, you're building AI on a digital infrastructure or a data infrastructure that's quicksand. It's not stable. Um,
Okay.
so, for example, I'm aware of in very large organizations, even teams that are running around with their, I don't know, low code, no code tools, and
Yeah.
and those are great for a prototype, right? But what happens is they are all white glove. White glove is, sort of bespoke built, uh, and they are not maintainable because they weren't built on a composable architecture. And so what happens is, as soon as the model changes, GPT gets updated from 4 to 5, everything falls apart, right?
Yep.
So that's an example of quicksand. Data is also like that. But like I said, I mean, it's the organizational immune responses. You can come in and add AI to any process, but you're going to run into resistance. And what's that resistance? It's your friend, but most people are treating it as your enemy, right? And so you bust through it. You bust through the organizational immune response. We're going to make it happen, right? But then you find out that you failed, right? And after that, you also have a lot of I would say, organizational resistance generally to anything that you want to do.
Right.
Compliance is treated as an afterthought. Now, let's just see if it works. We'll do the compliance bit later. No, you need to build in the compliance up front. that's part of the program. So look, there are levers that you can pull for each of these things. I would say, back to our earlier points in the discussion, focus on some strategic restraint. Frameworks of thinking like, look, I'm going to think big, start small, scale fast, right? Recognize that you need head, heart, and hands of the people in the organization. AI will not replace the people in your organization,
Yeah,
right? But you need everybody's head, heart, and hands stacked up on this. So look at small wins. Look at something small. Build confidence in your people. Your life will be much easier, right?
they're amazing golden words, I think, spoken by you, Ryan, honestly, talking about AI. And when people have that, let's say that worry, or let's say that woe that, AI is going to replace jobs, I feel it will not replace the jobs, but it will create more jobs. But the thing is, provided if people get skilled in understanding how the AI projects on. So that's what
Yeah,
my take is.
I'm also writing another article about this, and the part of the reason why AI will not replace jobs is we're all going to realize very soon that while the outputs of your chatbot or whatever it is look expert, right? They cannot be trusted.
Exactly.
And the only way that you know that they're trusted is that you've got to have experts review the outputs, right? There's this effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which, it's misunderstood, right? People think that when I
Okay.
say that, I'm saying that it's all these arrogant people who are going around feeling overconfident. And, it's basically, if you lack the expertise, you don't know enough to know that you lack the expertise, right? And so
Yeah.
what happens when we get knowledge from an AI chatbot, friction free, and it looks expert, there's a part of our brain which, because of that speed and lack of friction, just accepts it. We just accept it. And we don't know enough to know that, hey, I'm not a lawyer, but it just produced for me like this case that it references. I'll go talk to all of my friends about the case of so-and-so versus so-and-so, where it was found that blah, 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 right? But in fact, that might be completely hallucinated, right? And therefore the conclusions are hallucinated. The assumptions the AI used are hallucinated. And therefore all of this is BS, right? You need an
Yeah.
expert. You need to have expert review. Only an expert can tell that the AI has made a mistake.
Yep.
There's going to be jobs created in order to make sure that the AI is calibrated properly and that we are
Right.
calibrated properly to the AI's outputs, right? So that realization is going to come very soon, I think, for many enterprises.
It definitely will. And I mean, it's going to be a great awakening kind of a, let's say moment for all of them when they understand the reason behind the AI and, that it's not going to cause any harm, in the IT industry.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a temporary harm, and it's painful for many people. I don't want
Yeah.
to come off as part of the hype machine here, but I would say um, we will recover just as the dot-com bubble burst in the
Mhm.
90s, and I was part of that. It was, tough going for a while, right? But we recovered from that, and there were more jobs created.
I know. Everything, as they say, right, when disaster strikes, you have I mean, you need to have a backup and then, things will come back. But again, it takes a while, as you just told. Everything is a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Now, Ryan, I just wanted to understand, like, why do you think the platform engineering is only not for the plumbing side, but also, it actually forms as a, let's say, a crucial backbone for the transformation.
Yeah, platform engineering is not just about technology, it's also about culture, and it's about the operating model, right? So, at my last employer, um, one of the things that we had to do was to change the operating model. And The reason was we wanted more agility. We wanted more innovation. And we didn't want to do everything on a project basis. Project thinking slowed us down because you get the project approved, you've got the whole project approved, the whole thing has to be funded. It takes 18 months, and then, sometimes we haven't even achieved the outcome, or the outcome we needed changed in the 18 months, right? So we wanted to have a more innovative, agile approach. And the way we decomposed it was we wanted product teams that were focused on
Right.
a digital product or a digital enhanced product, and platform teams. The platform teams basically took care of the heavy lifting for the product teams.
Okay.
So my job was to create the kind of platform foundation here.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought about this as a digital assembly line almost, right? Think about the Lego approach, right? You
Mm-hmm.
create, your little red Lego blocks and your big blue Lego blocks, and the kind of custom shaped Lego blocks, and you can put them all together to create whatever you want, right? So that's called composability. And the idea there is you build it once and you can use it everywhere, right? The second thing we wanted was velocity through standards.
Okay.
And the standards piece is important. Again, constraints are good. The standards help you with compliance and security and, things like this. And then you don't have to worry about kind of a security review and a compliance review at the end that might mess everything up, right? So velocity through standards. If I can do that, then I can create this like DevOps culture in the product teams where I let them go. They only reach out to me when they need something, and they could just iterate, right? So baked into that is this idea of governance as code. So it's automatic compliance, and I have telemetry versus a review that I have to produce a document, right? I can actually see it. I can show it to an auditor that I am compliant and I'm maintaining compliance. Um, the fourth point here is like innovation enablement. So all of the processes needed to evolve. Enterprise architecture needed to evolve. PMO functions needed to evolve. Why? Because instead of 18 months, we wanted weeks. We wanted 2 weeks to 6 weeks to get, an MVP out to internal review. Think about the culture change that involves in a 240-year-old company, right? That's used to seeing the full plan up front. I want a
Mm-hmm.
5-year plan. I want to see the Gantt chart. I want to see step by step what we're all going to do. And then I'll say yes. Versus, hey, look, I got this hypothesis. It's almost more like the scientific method. I've got a hypothesis. I'm going to try something for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to use a little bit of my funding that's already been allocated to me, right? I'm going to work within the frameworks that have been given to me because this might scale. I'm going to experiment. I will come back to you and tell you whether my hypothesis was correct. So project to product thinking, being a cost center to being an innovation multiplier. So that's what a platform does. It's a multiplier. It allows the free
Mm-hmm.
exchange of value between that product team and maybe other product teams or maybe other stakeholders, right? And you kind of just allow for that governed ecosystem to evolve, right? So it goes from controlling a technology to cultivating an ecosystem, like a kind of like cultivating a garden, right? You choose what things you're going to allow into your garden, and then you
Yeah,
let them grow. Then you let them grow. Yeah.
exactly.
So the platform
Exactly.
is just one of the levers, right? But if you can get that right, that becomes a focus of that kind of cultural transformation, is my point.
Got it. Got it. Now, I mean, you just were always, mentioning about the company that you were part of, let's say, which is a 240-year-old company. So in that company, like, what are the frameworks? So let's say, what are the age-old frameworks that the company is following? Like, is it like lean manufacturing, or let's say, is it Six Sigma? Like, what are the things that, went about
Yeah, I
there?
mean, it was kind of all of the above, because even though I say it's a 240-year-old Japanese company. It had grown through acquisition of other companies. And the Japanese are, if if they're acquiring a company, it is out of deep respect. And
What do
often
you
what
mean
would
by
happen,
deep respect exactly?
okay, so Japanese company A acquires, a company, let's say in India or Australia. Um, they have done diligence. They have done review of that company. They've agreed to acquire it because it is synergistic, and they also respect the success of that company, right?
Okay.
And its people. And so, um, and back to this idea of organizational harmony, right? You want also the harmony with the people that you have deep respect for, right? So there often wasn't a like, hey, look, we're going to make everyone Japanese. No, that wasn't the focus, right? It was, look, we respect you, we respect what you've done. Let's work together, right? So there was cultural frameworks at my last employer for sure, and those were based on very old principles for the company. I'll just go ahead and say that it was Takeda that I worked for, and Takeda grew out of started at um, a little stall on Dotonbury Street, where really the differentiator was, look, I'm going to bring traditional Chinese medicine uh, to you, and it's going to be high quality, very high quality, well
Okay.
measured. My mark will be the mark of trust, of quality, right? And that's how it began. And the founder developed several principles. I'm not going to say them now, but they had to do with harmony, working in harmony, right? Being able to respectfully challenge each other, but also work in harmony. And that sort of thing is important for digital transformation, and it's the reason I focused it on that one.
Yep. That's an amazing point. And really, really, I've not collaborated with a Japanese person yet for my podcast, but actually you're giving me a, let's say, what do I say, a teaser, how the Japanese people are and how is their work culture. And I would be really, really honored to collaborate with a Japanese person and understand it more from their end. So,
Yeah,
you just have increased the curiosity level in me in this
I
case.
have deep respect in return for the Japanese colleagues that I met and worked with, and yeah, I definitely appreciate the mindset. What one of the things I remember is once essentially my colleagues in Japan had signed up for something.
Okay.
It was almost like a, we will not let you fail, right? So
Oh, that's so
and
nice.
there's some great things about the Japanese people that I've come to love. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's good to know, Ryan. Now, Ryan, I'll just give you a hypothetical case. Suppose, Ryan, you're part of a, let's say, a roundtable conversation, and you come across, let's say, different CIOs and different business leaders. So, if they ask you an advice, Ryan, can you give us an advice? Can you give us an advice, like, how do we harness the AI responsibly? Then, what kind of advice would you give them?
Focus on, I mean, first of all, focus on AI literacy. Look, back when I led the cloud transformation, one of the first things that we did was we created what I called the Cloud Champions program, and we engaged some training partners in that. But the idea was that we can break down a lot of resistance and find out who is willing to take this journey with us by creating training creating a training
Okay.
program. And there were incentives for the people who went along with it, like you get your Cloud Champions badge, and you can be kind of one of the elite people who understand what's going on. Right? But it also broke down resistance because people began to understand from people that they trusted, you know, their role in the new world. And it's the same with AI, right? Um, but I would say a little extra dimension with AI. We literally need to help people learn to think. I'm going to say critically, and I don't want that to be in a negative connotation, because everybody thinks that they can think critically,
Yeah.
right? Um, but you need to be able to recognize some red flags, and that's something that will de-risk the organization, right? So what I would recommend is starting there. Then also really, as I said, understand the problems you're trying to solve deeply before you go apply AI.
Right, right. That's let's say a very effective point, that you have just just came across. So let's say I have given me here. Now, Ryan, I mean, I just told this is a hypothetical case, but in real life scenario, Ryan, did you give an advice to people, on these lines?
Oh, I have conversations every day where I'm giving advice like that, often for free. But look, I want people to be successful, right? I think AI is a groundbreaking technology. Gen AI is groundbreaking. We don't really necessarily understand how to use it properly yet. People think that they do, and there are a lot of instant experts out there. Um, But, I think the fact that there's an MIT study that 95% of AI initiatives are failing right now beyond pilot. It
Okay.
proves that there's a big problem, right?
Yeah,
So,
there is.
and, the reasons to me are maybe not focusing on platform, maybe not focusing on culture and training. Um, there's massive amounts of money being wasted, right? So you're throwing money at a problem that you don't truly understand, right? So, the, learn to detect those red flags of failure.
Exactly. I mean, I just have understood it this way, Ryan. I feel that, AI is failing because the data also is not in the right shape. Sometimes, you're bringing the unstructured data, or let's say the data is not cleansed properly, because I am talking it from the perspective of a data scientist. So correct me if I'm wrong. If you feel that, no, Akhil,
Yeah.
there is a layer to that as well.
Oh, totally. I think, we've been saying this for years before the Gen AI sort of revolution. Like, we've got to clean up our data, right? A lot of organizations are good at saving lots of data, but they're not good at cleansing it and getting into a format that's usable.
All
Um,
right.
I talked to someone at Roche, GRED, fairly recently, and I'm impressed with what they're doing with their data, and the reason is that they need it for computational biology,
Oh, okay.
and if there was any pharma out there that was probably set up to develop kind of a large language model for computational biology, it would probably be them. But uh, most organizations are storing the data, they're not cleansing it, they're not getting it into a form that's actually useful for AI, and they don't understand how to constrain the AI to use only truly validated, verified sources, right? And that's one of the reasons that a lot of organizations are failing.
Completely, completely. That summarizes the point here, Ryan. So, Ryan, before we actually, conclude our podcast session, let's take a lighter route. All this while I was, bombarding you with
Uh,
questions about AI, about, your, let's say, about your journey, about the business value, about Akito, which was the point you just came across with, and asking you a follow-up question on that. Now, I'll take a pretty lighter route in the form of a rapid fire round where I will just, let's say, divulge more on your likes and interests.
okay.
All right. So the first question to you, Ryan, is Ryan, since you're based out of US, I wanted to understand, like, what's your favorite sports team?
Chicago Cubs. Go Cubs.
Oh, the Chicago Cubs. All right.
Yeah, well,
Brilliant,
I
brilliant.
spent 25 years in Chicago, something like that. So yeah, kind of my team.
Okay. So if I would ask you to name, one of the greatest player of Chicago Cubs, who would that be?
Well, Rhino has to be in there. You know, I, I'm blanking on some others right now, but yeah, I gotta have a shout out to Theo Epstein, who's the manager who finally got us through the curse of the curse of the Chicago Cubs, and
Okay.
also did so, by the way, for the Boston Red Sox. So shout out to him. You know, um, yeah, I guess that's my
Okay.
answer.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, what was that, I mean, TV show that you were, fond of during your childhood?
For whatever reason, the A Team is springing to mind right now. That wasn't probably my favorite show, but I mean, back in those days, I remember there were all those like Donald P. Bellisario shows like Knight Rider and whatever. But yeah, those were fun. Looking
Okay.
back, like I would never show my daughter some of these songs, the shows, like the A Team. I would never show her that.
Got it. That's pretty good. No, in the starting when we actually kicked off this I mean podcast session, you told me you really like playing video games. So what's that OG video game that you love to play now and then?
Oh, well, when I finally got a console, of course, there was the Super Mario Brothers, et cetera, Legend of Zelda. On my, I remember on my Apple II clone, it was a Laser 128. I was playing Ultima 4. I say it would say was the best one of the series. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Now,
Oh, shout out to
Ryan's
Zork as well. Before the graphics, the Zork.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Zorg. Oh yeah, I've heard of that as well. I'm not much. I mean, I'm not much of a whiz into video games, but I know few names here and there, and I really like to know more on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's good, right? Now, Ryan, if I would, since I'm based out of India, since I come from India, I would personally like to ask you, like, what's your favorite Indian dish that you like to try now and then?
Well, I love me a good curry. I would say I tandoori kind of style chicken, butter chicken. I love that
Mhm.
sort of stuff too. Comfort food.
Comfort food, yeah, absolute comfort food for even for Indians like us, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So the final question to you, Ryan, what's your favorite holiday destination?
For me, and I don't know necessarily why. It's Hawaii. There was
Okay,
just I guess the first time I went there, I went to Maui. The first time I went to Hawaii, um, it was just magical. The whole experience was magical, and
okay.
so I've been watching like Chief of War on Apple TV recently, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I definitely recognize um, some of the difficulties about like the Western influence over Hawaii, and that kind of hurts. But it's a beautiful place. I have respect also for the culture there, very influenced by Asian culture, and
Yep.
yeah, beautiful people and a beautiful place to go.
Awesome, awesome. That's a great recommendation, Ryan. So, Ryan, finally, thank you so much for making time from your busy schedule and being part of this podcast initiative. Finally, we are here, and it's make a mission accomplished for our podcast collaboration, I would say. I just had a great time conversing with you. Talking about the nuances of AI, the business value about your journey, and your take on the Japanese culture with respect to the IT industry, and they were all really remarkable. So, thank you so much again, Ryan.
Yeah, Akil, thanks so much. This was fun. Um, I wish you well. I wish all your viewers and listeners well, and look out for more from Pharynós and more publications on LinkedIn. If you would, follow, like, repost, that would be great.
Awesome. So, listeners, you just have heard it from Ryan. So, anything, I mean, go up to Ryan's LinkedIn profile, and you'll get all his articles and everything related to his company there. So, you'll also have a complete insight about it. Like in the conversation, you have got to know what Ryan is, but once you go through his LinkedIn profile, you'll get a complete note about it on a stretch.
All right. Thank you,
All
Akil.
right.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. All right, listeners. So this is your host Akhil Navluri signing off. We would be back with another podcast episode with another industry leader very soon. Till then, keep listening. Take care. Goodbye. Thank you. And au revoir. Thank you.